Commander Hyanwu stood on the bridge of his scout ship, staring at the blue planet below. His three-person crew had been in orbit for 6 days now, watching and recording everything about this new species. The mission was simple and routine. Observe the primitive civilization, catalog their technology level, assess any potential threat to the Galactic Federation, and return home with the data. Hyanwu had done this 43 times before across different star systems. This was supposed to be Mission 44. It's just another entry in his long career. The planet was called Earth by its inhabitants, who called themselves humans. Pilot G1 had brought them into the system without any problems. Their stealth technology kept them completely invisible to the crude detection systems below. The humans were still using radio waves and primitive satellites. They hadn't even developed faster-than-light travel yet. Their most advanced spacecraft could barely reach their own moon, small rock that orbited their planet. Xenobiologist Tae Yong had spent days studying the humans through their long-range scanners. His report was thorough, but unimpressive. Humans were fragile creatures, made mostly of water. They lived less than 100 years on average. They needed constant food and oxygen. Their bodies were weak compared to most species in the Federation. They had only 2 eyes and could only see a narrow range of light. Their hearing was limited. They couldn't survive in extreme heat or cold without artificial protection. One of the junior species from the Outer Rim could snap a human in half without effort. Weapons analyst Dae-yoon had finished her assessment that morning. Human weapons technology was centuries behind Federation standards. They still used chemical explosives to propel metal projectiles. Their most powerful weapons were basic fission bombs that released energy through splitting atoms. Dae-yoon had laughed when she ran the numbers. A single Federation scout ship's shields could withstand a direct hit from humanity's largest nuclear weapon. The blast wouldn't even scratch the hull plating. Their missiles were slow and easy to intercept. Their aircraft couldn't break their own sound barrier without special designs. Hyanwu reviewed all the data one final time before preparing his report. Every measurement pointed to the same conclusion. Humans were no threat to the Federation. They were barely a threat to themselves. The planet showed signs of recent conflicts between different human groups. They had nearly destroyed themselves with their primitive weapons several times in the past century. They were divided into hundreds of competing nations. They couldn't even agree on basic cooperation. Among their own species, the commander opened the official report template and began filling in the standard fields. Species name, human. Home world, Earth. 3rd planet in the Sol system. Technology level, pre-FTL, early atomic age. Military capability, negligible. Biological threat, none. Recommended classification, harmless. Suggested action, standard observation protocol. Possible integration timeline, 500 to 1,000 cycles. Pending cultural development and technological advancement, Go 1. Brought Hyanwu a warm drink as he finished the report. She was smiling, already thinking about their return home. This had been an easy mission. No hostile encounters. No dangerous organisms. No complicated political situations requiring careful diplomatic handling. Just a simple species of primitives who would probably destroy themselves before they ever reached the stars. Even if they did survive and develop space travel eventually. They would be so far behind the Federation that integration would be simple and peaceful. Tae-young joined them on the bridge. Securing his biological samples in storage containers, he had collected atmospheric data, genetic samples from various life forms, and detailed scans of human physiology. Everything was properly documented according to Federation science protocols. Dae-yoon was running final checks on their weapon systems, making sure everything was ready for the jump back home. The mission was complete. All that remained was transmitting the data and leaving the system. Hyun-Woo authorized the final data burst. The report would reach Federation Command in a few days through the relay network. By then, his crew would already be home, filing their paperwork and taking well-earned rest. He initiated the transmission sequence. Compressed data containing 6 days of observations, thousands of images, detailed analysis. and his official classification streamed out from their communications array toward the nearest relay station. The entire package was sent in less than 3 seconds. That was when the alarm started. Screaming GON's console lit up with warnings she had never seen before. Their stealth field was fluctuating. Something was interfering with their cloak generators. Huan-Wu rushed to her station, checking the readings himself. This wasn't a malfunction. This was active scanning. Someone was looking for them with technology that shouldn't exist on this backward planet, Da Yun confirmed it moments later. A human military installation on the surface had locked onto their position. Somehow, impossibly, they had detected the scout ship. Huan-Wu felt a brief moment of concern, but his training took over immediately. Even if the humans knew they were there, what could they do about it? Their fastest missiles couldn't reach orbit in time. Their weapons couldn't penetrate Federation shields. Detection meant nothing without the capability to act on that information, he ordered. Gi-1 to take them out of orbit and prepare for the jump to faster-than-light speed. The pilot's hands moved across her controls with practiced efficiency. The ship pulled away from Earth, ascending higher into space. The engines began their warm-up sequence for the jump. In 60 seconds, they would be gone, leaving the Sol system far behind. The humans could watch them leave and wonder what they had seen. By the time humanity developed the technology to follow, the Federation would have already made official contact on their own terms. 50 seconds. The jump drive hummed with building energy. Taeyong strapped into his acceleration couch, ready for the brief discomfort of faster-than-light transition. Dayun secured the last of the equipment. Everything was proceeding normally. 40 seconds. Jiwan reported minor fluctuations in the drive core. Nothing serious. Probably just interference from Earth's magnetic field. They were still well within safe parameters. 30 seconds. Huan-Wu allowed himself to relax slightly. Another routine mission completed. Another primitive species cataloged and classified. The Federation's knowledge grew with each discovery. This was the purpose of the scout course. They were explorers and scientists, not warriors. 20 seconds. Dayun's console showed something strange. Energy signatures coming from the planet's surface. Military satellites were repositioning. Something was launching. Multiple somethings. Fast. Too fast for chemical rockets. 10 seconds. Jiwan's voice had an edge of confusion. The objects from Earth were accelerating beyond what their technology should allow. How were they generating that much thrust? The physics didn't match the assessment. Something was wrong with the data or the sensors. 5 seconds. The jump drive reached full power. G1 engaged the FTL system. Space twisted around the scout ship. They were leaving, jumping away at speeds that would take them light years from Earth in moments. No primitive species could follow a ship in faster-than-light travel. It was impossible. 2 seconds. Huan-Wu saw them on the display. Human ships, small, fast, coming after them. Following them. Into the jump corridor. Matching their speed. Getting closer. 1 second. Guan screamed. Something was wrong. The human vessels were right behind them. They were inside the scout ship's jump field. At superluminal velocity. Keeping pace. Getting closer. This wasn't possible. This wasn't happening. The last thing Huan-Wu transmitted was a broken message. His voice cracked with fear and confusion. They were being followed. Humans were somehow following them through faster-than-light space. Then his hands moved to input the emergency beacon sequence. The transmission cut off mid-signal. The scout ship's automated systems sent one final ping before everything went dark. In Federation command, analysts would receive the data burst containing the assessment. They would file the report. They would read Huan-Wu's classification. They would mark humanity as harmless. They would never receive his final transmission. They would wait for the scout ship to return. They would wait for a very long time. Admiral Young-Soo had served in the Galactic Federation Navy for 300 cycles. He had fought in the frontier wars against hostile machine intelligence. He had negotiated peace with species that communicated through color changes and chemical signals. He had commanded fleets, trained officers, and earned medals that covered most of his dress uniform. In all those years, nothing had prepared him for the file sitting on his desk. 10 scout ships, all sent to the same unremarkable yellow star system. All lost. Every single one had transmitted the same initial assessment before vanishing. Species, human. Classification, harmless. Then silence. No distress calls. No wreckage found. No survivors. Just empty space where advanced Federation vessels should have been. The Council had called an emergency session. Yang Su sat in the vast chamber where representatives from 1,000 worlds gathered to discuss matters of galactic importance. The room hummed with worried conversations in hundreds of languages. The translator implants in everyone's heads turned the chaos into comprehensible speech. Fear smelled the same in every language, and the chamber reeked of it. The first scout to Earth had been Haiyan Wu's team 50 cycles ago. Standard procedure. They had sent their data burst as expected. Humanity was primitive. Pre-FTL technology. Simple chemical weapons. Fragile biology. Zero threat potential. The report was filed and everyone expected the scout ship to return. It never did. When a ship failed to report back after the expected time, Federation protocol called for a search and rescue mission. Another scout was sent. It found nothing. No debris field. No evidence of conflict. No trace of Haiyan Wu's vessel. That second scout transmitted its own findings and also classified humans as harmless. Then it vanished to Yang Su's intelligence officer, Sojin, had been reviewing the case files for weeks. She was brilliant at finding patterns that others missed. Her species had evolved as persistence hunters who could track prey across vast distances using tiny clues. She brought her findings to Yang Su's office late one night, and her expression told him everything he needed to know before she spoke. This was bad, Sojin laid out the timeline. 10 scout missions over 50 cycles. Each team was elite. Each ship was equipped with the most advanced technology the Federation could provide. Stealth systems that could hide a vessel from stars going supernova. Shields that could withstand direct impacts from asteroids. Weapons that could glass a planet from orbit. Jump drives that could cross the galaxy in days. Each mission had the best equipment and the best people. Each mission assessed humanity the same way. Each mission disappeared. The pattern was disturbing. The first 3 ships vanished in the Sol system itself, close to Earth. The 4th scout ship made it to light years away before contact was lost. The 5th made it 5 light years. Each subsequent mission seemed to get farther from Earth before disappearing, but none made it home. It was as if something was learning to hunt them better each time. Learning to reach farther into space. Learning to track Federation technology. Now that should have been impossible to follow. Yang Su studied the fragmentary data that survived. Automated beacons had captured brief sensor readings before the ships went dark. The information made no sense. Human vessels appearing on scanners, but moving at speeds their technology couldn't achieve. Human energy signatures that matched no known power source. Human weapons punching through Federation shields that were supposed to be impenetrable. Everything the scouts had reported said this was impossible. Humans didn't have this technology. They couldn't have developed it in just 50 cycles. That was barely enough time for a species to colonize their own moon, let alone master faster-than-light travel and energy weapons. Sojin presented her theory to the Council. Every assessment was technically accurate. Humans were physically weak. Their biology was fragile. Their baseline technology was primitive. But the scouts had made one critical error. They had measured what humans were, not what humans could become when threatened. The scouts had been observers studying animals in a zoo, never considering that the animals might notice the observers and react. The council chamber erupted in argument. Councillor Ventar, from the merchant worlds, demanded immediate military action. His species controlled vast trade networks and couldn't afford instability in unexplored regions. If humans were somehow destroying Federation ships, they needed to be eliminated before they became a larger threat. Councillor Mason from the Academic Consortium argued the opposite. The disappearances could be coincidence, equipment failure, natural phenomena. They didn't have proof that humans were responsible. Launching a military strike against a potentially innocent species would violate every principle the Federation stood for. Young-Soo listened to the debate for hours. Arguments went in circles. Some wanted war. Some wanted more investigation. Some wanted to quarantine the entire sector and forget Earth existed. Finally, he stood and asked for permission to speak. The chamber fell silent. Young-Soo's reputation carried weight. When he talked, people listened. He proposed one final mission. Not another scout ship sneaking around in the shadows. A full diplomatic envoy with military escort. Make open contact with humanity. Communicate directly. Discover the truth about what happened to the lost scouts. If humans were hostile, they would show it. If they were innocent, they deserved the chance to explain. Either way, the Federation would finally have answers. The Council debated his proposal for another full day. Eventually they agreed, but with strict conditions. Young-Soo would lead the mission personally. He would take his flagship and 3 battle cruisers. Enough firepower to defend themselves, but not so much that it looked like an invasion. If the envoy was threatened in any way, if even one Federation ship was attacked, the full armada would sterilize Earth from orbit. Humanity would be erased from existence as a cautionary tale to other species. Better to destroy one primitive world than risk the safety of the entire Federation. Young-Soo accepted the command. He selected his crew carefully. First Officer Hannah had served with him for 50 cycles. She was loyal, smart, and unshakable in combat. Science Officer Dong-Han was young but brilliant, with degrees in xenobiology and cultural anthropology. Security Chief Jason was paranoid in the best possible way. Always expecting trouble and preparing for it, the fleet prepared for departure. For massive ships loaded with enough weapons to conquer a small empire, Young-Soo reviewed the mission parameters one final time. Approach peacefully. Establish communication. Discover what happened to the scouts. Return home with answers. Simple objectives, but nothing about this mission felt simple. Sojin came to see him off before the fleet jumped. She had been doing more research, digging deeper into old records. Her expression was troubled. She handed him a data chip containing her latest findings, but the fleet was already powering up their jump drives. There was no time to review it now. Sojin grabbed his arm, her eyes wide with urgency. She told him to be careful. Then she said something that made his blood run cold. The scouts hadn't been killed in battle. They had been hunted. There was a difference. Young-Soo wanted to ask what she meant, but the jump sequence was starting. He had to get to his ship. Sojin promised to send a detailed report through the relay network. It would reach him in a few days. By then, he would already be at Earth. Young-Soo thanked her and rushed to his flagship. The massive vessel hummed with power as its jump drive spun up. The fleet jumped together, crossing dozens of light years in an instant. Space twisted around them as they moved faster than light, faster than causality itself. The journey to Earth would take several jumps over several days. Between jumps, Young-Soo tried to review Sojin's preliminary data, but the files were corrupted. The transfer hadn't completed before they left. He would have to wait for her full report. On the 3rd day of travel, they detected something unusual. Ghost signals in subspace. Brief energy signatures that appeared and vanished. Jason reported that the patterns didn't match any known Federation technology. They weren't natural phenomena either. Something artificial was creating them. When Dong-Han analyzed the signals, he found they had been there for weeks, maybe months. Brief pings scattered across dozens of star systems between Federation space and Earth, almost like someone was watching the routes. Monitoring traffic, waiting. Young-Soo ordered the fleet to proceed at battle readiness. Shields up. Weapons armed. Sensors at maximum. Whatever had destroyed 10 scout ships might be waiting for them too. The crew was nervous, but professional. They were trained for this. They were ready. The fleet made its final jump and emerged at the edge of the Sol system. Earth was still days away at sublight speed. Young-Soo ordered the communications officer to broadcast peaceful greetings in 200 languages. They transmitted continuously, making it clear they came as friends. The message repeated over and over. We come in peace. We wish to communicate. We mean no harm. They detected human vessels almost immediately. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. Ships that shouldn't exist, surrounding his fleet in formations that spoke of military training and tactical coordination. The humans had been waiting. They had known exactly when and where the Federation fleet would arrive. The human ships held position around Youngsu's fleet like predators circling wounded prey. They didn't fire. They didn't communicate. They just waited in perfect formation. Jason ran continuous scans, trying to understand what he was looking at. The human vessels were strange hybrids. Their basic hulls looked like primitive chemical rockets. It's barely more advanced than what the first scouts had reported decades ago. But the sensor readings told a different story. Energy signatures that matched Federation power cores. Weapon systems that shouldn't exist. Shield generators that were definitely not human in origin. Hana stood next to Youngsu on the bridge, her face unreadable. She had fought in real wars against real enemies. She knew what combat formations looked like. The humans weren't just surrounding them. They were positioned at every possible escape vector. Every jump point. Every tactical advantage. This wasn't lucky positioning. This was centuries of military doctrine made real. These ships were crewed by people who understood warfare at a level that took most species. Thousands of years to develop. After 3 hours of tense silence, the humans finally responded to the Federation's peace broadcast. A simple text message in perfect galactic standard. Coordinates for a meeting. Neutral ground at a space station orbiting Mars, the 4th planet. 3 delegates from each side. No weapons. No guards beyond the minimum for safety. Youngsu discussed it with his senior staff. It could be a trap. It probably was a trap. But they had come here for answers, and the only way to get them was to accept the meeting. Youngsu chose Hana and Donghan to accompany him. Hana protested. As first officer, her duty was to stay with the ship. If something happened to the admiral, she needed to be in command. Youngsu overruled her. He needed someone he trusted absolutely, and that was Hana. Jason would remain on the flagship with orders to monitor every sensor array. If anything went wrong, if the meeting turned hostile, Jason was to jump the fleet back to Federation, space immediately, and report everything. The small shuttle, carrying the 3 Federation officers, approached the human station slowly. Donghin studied the structure through the viewport. It was clearly new construction. The station hadn't existed when the first scouts surveyed the system. Its design was crude but functional. Rotating sections for artificial gravity, basic life support. Minimal defensive weapons. It looked exactly like something a species with primitive technology would build. But appearances meant nothing anymore. Youngsu didn't trust anything his eyes or sensors told him about human capabilities. They docked without incident. The station's interior was utilitarian. Metal corridors. Harsh lighting. No decoration or comfort. A human soldier met them at the airlock. He was young, maybe in his 30s, by human standards. He wore a simple military uniform with no visible weapons. He greeted them in galactic standard with only a slight accent and led them through the corridors to a conference. Room 3 humans waited inside. The first stood as they entered. She introduced herself as Ambassador Minji. She was middle-aged by human standards, with black hair tied back and dark eyes that missed nothing. Her smile was professional and pleasant. She wore civilian clothing and carried herself with diplomatic confidence. The second human remained seated. General Tejo wore a military uniform covered in medals and rank insignia. He was older than Minji, with gray hair and a face that showed no emotion at all. He didn't smile. He didn't blink. He just watched the Federation officers with the same intensity a hunter watches prey. The third human was a civilian scientist named Sumin. She was younger than the others, perhaps in her 20s. She wore casual clothing and had the distracted air of someone more interested in data than people. She was doing something on a portable computer, her fingers moving quickly across its interface. She looked up briefly when the Federation delegation entered, nodded once, and went back to her work. Young-Soo took a seat across the table from Minji. Hana and Dong-Han flanked him. The admiral began with standard diplomatic pleasantries. He introduced himself and his officers. He thanked the humans for agreeing to meet. He expressed the Federation's interest in peaceful contact with humanity. He kept his voice calm and friendly. Everything by the book. Everything proper, Minji responded with equal politeness. She welcomed them to human space. She expressed humanity's interest in learning about the Federation. She talked about mutual cooperation and shared goals. Her tone was perfect. Her words were exactly what a diplomat should say. But Young-Soo had negotiated with dozens of species over 3 centuries. He knew when someone was performing rather than communicating. Minji was acting, playing a role, saying the right words while thinking something else entirely. Dong-Han was running medical scans as discreetly as possible. The readings on his handheld scanner made him frown. He glanced at Young-Soo and tapped the device slightly, indicating something was wrong. Young-Soo gave him a small nod to continue. Dong-Han adjusted the settings and scanned again. His frown deepened. The human's neural activity was off the charts. Their reaction times were far beyond biological norms for their species. There were microscopic machines throughout their bodies, enhancements, augmentations, technology integrated at the cellular level. Young-Soo decided to stop playing the diplomatic game. He asked directly about the missing scouts. 10 ships had come to this system over 50 cycles. None had returned. Everyone had classified humanity as harmless before disappearing. What happened to them? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Minji's pleasant smile never wavered. She folded her hands on the table and spoke in the same calm, diplomatic tone. The scouts had encountered accidents. Space was dangerous. Equipment could fail. Things happened in the vastness between stars. She was sorry for the Federation's loss. She hoped the missing crews were at peace. Her words were sympathetic and empty. She was lying. Everyone in the room knew she was lying. She didn't seem to care that they knew. Hana's hand moved toward the small sidearm concealed under her jacket. It was a pure reflex, trained response to an obvious threat. She never completed the motion. Sumin was suddenly standing behind her, having crossed the room faster than Hana's enhanced reflexes could track. The scientist's hand was on Hana's wrist, preventing her from drawing the weapon. Sumin's grip was gentle, but completely unbreakable. She smiled apologetically and asked Hana to please not do that. Then she returned to her seat and went back to her computer as if nothing had happened. Young-Soo felt his combat instincts screaming. These weren't diplomats. These were predators wearing diplomatic masks. Every movement was calculated. Every word was chosen. They were completely in control of this situation and wanted the Federation delegation to know it. General Taeho finally spoke. His voice was deep and level. He leaned forward and asked a question that changed everything. When the Federation scouts cataloged humanity as harmless, did they consider what humans might become once they knew they weren't alone in the universe? Did they think about how humans might react to being observed without their knowledge by vastly superior alien technology? Did they consider what a species might do if they realized they were being studied like insects under glass by unknown beings with unknowable intentions? Taeho gestured toward the viewport showing Earth below. Humanity had spent its entire history fighting. Fighting nature. Fighting disease. Fighting each other. Every generation had faced extinction-level threats. Ice ages, supervolcanoes, asteroid impacts, plagues that killed millions. Wars that nearly destroyed civilization. Humans had survived because they learned to adapt or die. When the first scout ship was detected, humanity faced a new threat. Aliens with technology centuries ahead of human capabilities. Unknown intentions. Unknown capabilities. Unknown everything. Young-Soo began to understand the horrible truth. Humans hadn't attacked the scouts out of hostility. They had reacted out of fear. Dong-Hyun voiced what everyone was thinking. How did humanity advance so quickly? 50 cycles ago, they were primitive. Now they had faster-than-light travel and energy weapons and technology that matched or exceeded Federation standards. What happened? Sumin looked up from her computer. She smiled, and for the first time it reached her eyes. The smile was full of pride and something darker. She said one word: necessity. Young Su felt cold spreading through his chest. Then alarms started blaring on his communication device. Jason's voice came through, panicked and confused. Human ships were powering weapons. Hundreds of targeting locks were painting the Federation fleet. Electronic warfare systems were infiltrating their computers. Within seconds, every Federation vessel was completely compromised. Min-G stood calmly. She walked to the viewport and looked down at Earth. Her voice was still pleasant and diplomatic as she explained. Every scout team that came to observe humanity had given them more information, more technology to study, more data to analyze. Each ship was a gift of knowledge wrapped in a mystery. Humans were very good at solving mysteries when their survival depended on it. She turned back to face Youngsu. The pleasant smile was gone. What remained was something cold and calculating. The Federation scouts had come as observers. They treated humans like animals to be cataloged and filed away. Youngsu sat in what was technically a conference room but felt more like a cage. His fleet remained surrounded by human vessels. Jason reported from the flagship that every Federation system was compromised. Human code had infiltrated computers that should have been impossible to hack. Backdoors existed in systems that had taken the Federation millennia to develop. The humans had complete control over weapons, shields, life support, and jump drives. Youngsu's 4 massive warships were now expensive. Pieces of metal floating helplessly in space, Hana paced the room like a caged predator. She had been disarmed in seconds by a civilian scientist. Her pride was wounded worse than anything else. Dong Hyan sat quietly, reviewing scan data on his device. His hands trembled slightly. He had studied hundreds of alien species in his career. He understood biology and evolution. What he was seeing in the human delegates made no sense according to everything he knew. The augmentations in their bodies were beyond anything the Federation had achieved. Not just more advanced, different, as if humanity had taken a completely separate path to the same destination. Su-Min activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room. She apologized for what they were about to see. Her voice carried genuine regret, which somehow made everything worse. The display showed the fate of the first scout team, Commander Hyanwoo and his crew. Youngsu had known Hyanwoo. They had served together decades ago. Good officer, good man. The display showed him screaming. The humans had captured Hyanwoo's ship using technology that shouldn't have existed. They had somehow tracked the scout vessel through faster-than-light space and forced it back to normal physics. Human boarding teams had breached the hull using cutting tools made from their own captured equipment. The scout crew had tried to fight back. Federation weapons had been useless. Human soldiers wore powered armor that made them stronger and faster. They had stunned the crew and taken them alive. What came next was methodical and horrifying. Xenobiologist Taeyang was taken to a human medical facility. Sumin explained in a clinical voice that humans needed to learn Galactic Standard quickly. The fastest way to understand an alien language was to study the brain of a native speaker while they were using it. The display showed human scientists carefully dissecting Taeyang's speech centers while keeping him conscious. They mapped every neural pathway, recorded every brainwave. Within days, human linguists could speak and read Galactic Standard perfectly. Pilot G1's fate was different, but equally brutal. Human engineers needed to understand faster-than-light travel. They had theories from their own physics research, but no practical experience. G1 and her ship became the teaching tool. The display showed human technicians taking apart the scout vessel, one component at a time. They asked G1 to explain each system. When she refused, they simply continued working and figured it out through trial and error. They tested the jump drive repeatedly, making small modifications each time. Some tests failed catastrophically. G1 watched her ship being destroyed and rebuilt dozens of times, until humans finally understood how it worked. Weapons analyst Dayun was subjected to similar treatment. Human military researchers wanted to know about Federation combat systems, shield technology, energy weapons, tactical doctrine. Do-yoon was a trained intelligence officer. She knew how to resist interrogation. She gave them nothing. So humans tried different approaches. They didn't torture her for information. They simply put her in a room and let her watch as they reverse-engineered everything anyway. They learned from observation and experimentation. Do-yoon's expertise wasn't needed. Her knowledge was just a shortcut. Commander Hyun-woo lasted the longest. Military protocols were complex and had to be extracted through direct questioning. Human interrogators were patient and persistent. They used techniques refined over centuries of human and human warfare. Psychological pressure, sleep deprivation, drugs that lowered inhibitions. They never physically harmed him. They didn't need to. Hyun-woo eventually told them everything about Federation fleet movements, command structures, and tactical doctrines. The display showed him broken and hollow, answering questions in a flat voice while human analysts took notes. Soo-min paused the playback. She explained that all 4 crew members were eventually granted quick and painless deaths. Humans had gotten what they needed. Keeping the scouts alive longer would have been cruel. The bodies were preserved according to their species' customs. They would be returned to the Federation for proper burial rites. Soo-min's tone suggested she thought this was merciful. Young-soo wanted to vomit. General Taeho took over the presentation. Each subsequent scout team had been intercepted farther from Earth. Humans learned to track Federation jump signatures by studying G1's ship. They developed countermeasures to stealth systems by analyzing Hyun-woo's vessel. They predicted scout behavior patterns using psychological profiles built from interrogating captured crews. Every scout sent to Earth provided more data, more technology, more knowledge. By the 10th team, humans were intercepting scouts at the edge of the solar system before they even entered orbit. Hana finally spoke, her voice shaking with rage. They were primitives who had barely discovered fire in cosmic terms. How did they advance so impossibly fast? How did they go from chemical rockets to faster-than-light travel in 50 cycles? It should have taken thousands of years, millions. Some species never achieved it at all. What made humans different? Soo-min answered with disturbing honesty. Humans weren't different. They weren't smarter or stronger or more creative than other species. They were just products of their environment. Earth was a death world. Harsh climate swings, deadly predators, diseases that evolved faster than immune systems, natural disasters that could wipe out entire civilizations, ice ages that forced adaptation or extinction, volcanic winters that blocked out the sun, meteor impacts that killed most life on the planet multiple times. Every generation of humans had faced existential threats. Most died, some survived. Those survivors passed on their genes and knowledge. Over millions of years, this brutal selection pressure created a species that was very good at one thing: not strength, not intelligence, not technology, adaptation. When faced with a threat, humans changed to meet it or died trying. No other species in the Federation had evolved under such constant pressure. Most species developed on stable worlds with predictable conditions. They had time to evolve slowly, peacefully. Humans never had that. Luxury Donghan realized the terrible truth with growing horror. The Federation scouts had made a fundamental error in their assessment. They measured human capabilities at one moment in time and assumed those capabilities were static. They never considered that humans were designed by evolution to be dynamic, to change, to adapt, to overcome any obstacle through whatever means necessary. When the first scout ship was detected, humanity faced a threat unlike any in their history. Not a predator or disease or natural disaster. An intelligent alien civilization with technology so advanced it might as well be magic. Humanity couldn't fight them with current weapons. They couldn't negotiate from a position of weakness. They couldn't hide on one planet when the aliens had faster-than-light travel. So humans did what humans had always done when threatened with extinction. They adapted. The decision to capture the scouts wasn't made lightly. Tejo explained the human perspective with cold military logic. First contact with unknown aliens could go many ways. Best case, peaceful exchange of knowledge and culture. Worst case, immediate invasion and extermination. Middle cases ranged from exploitation to enslavement, to slow absorption into a larger empire. Without information, humans couldn't know which scenario they faced. Without technology, they couldn't defend themselves against any negative outcome. Capturing the scouts was a calculated risk. If the Federation was peaceful, humanity would eventually explain and apologize. If the Federation was hostile, humans needed every advantage they could get. The ethics of the decision were debated endlessly in human governments and academic circles. Many humans opposed the capture and study of sentient beings. Many more argued that survival justified any action. Ultimately, fear won over ethics. Better to study captured aliens than be studied by them, Minji added historical context. Humans had experience with technologically superior civilizations encountering primitive ones. Human history was full of examples. European explorers with guns and steel meeting indigenous peoples with spears and leather. The results were almost always the same: conquest, slavery, disease, genocide. The technologically primitive cultures were destroyed or absorbed. Survivors lived as second-class citizens in empires built on their land. Humanity remembered those lessons. They refused to be the primitives waiting for ships from unknown shores. Young-Soo understood now why the scouts never returned. It wasn't about hostility. It was about survival. Humans had looked at the galaxy and seen predators circling. They had reacted the only way their evolutionary history had taught them to react. They hunted the hunters. They captured the scouts, learned everything they could, and used that knowledge to ensure their own survival. Every moral line was crossed without hesitation because the alternative was potential extinction. Admiral Young-Soo sat alone in his quarters aboard his flagship. The ship was technically under his command. Practically, it was under human control. Every system was compromised. Human code ran through Federation computers like a disease. His weapons wouldn't fire without permission. His shields wouldn't activate. Even basic life support was monitored by human technicians who could shut it down with a single command. Young-Soo had commanded fleets and fought wars. He had never felt this helpless. He composed a message to the Federation Council. His hands shook slightly as he began recording. This message might be the most important communication in galactic history. Every word mattered. He started with facts, hard data about human capabilities. Their technology level had increased exponentially. They possessed faster-than-light travel equal to Federation standards, energy weapons that could penetrate military-grade shields, electronic warfare systems that made Federation computers worthless, stealth technology that was somehow better than what they had reverse-engineered from captured scouts. Young-Soo detailed the fate of the 10 scout teams. Every horrible detail, the dissections, the interrogations, the systematic extraction of knowledge through methods that violated every Federation law regarding treatment of sentient beings. He didn't soften the truth. The Council needed to understand what humanity was capable of when threatened. They needed to know that the species classified as harmless had become the most dangerous known threat in the galaxy. But Young-Soo also explained why. Humans hadn't acted out of cruelty or aggression. They had reacted to a perceived existential threat, the only way their evolution had prepared them to react. They adapted. They overcame. They survived by any means necessary. The Federation scouts had approached Earth like scientists observing animals. The animals had noticed. The animals had been intelligent. The animals had been terrified. Terror made humans more dangerous than any weapon. Hana entered his quarters without knocking. She looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes. Uniform wrinkled. She had been awake for 30 hours reviewing data that Dong Haiyan kept sending her. The science officer was obsessed with understanding how humans had advanced so quickly. Hana dropped into a chair and told Young-Soo what they had discovered. Humans had been given a tour of their facilities. Not all of them. just enough to understand the scope of what humanity had built in 50 cycles. Dong Haiyan had seen genetic modification programs that made Federation research look primitive. Humans were redesigning their own biology, making themselves stronger, faster, more resistant to disease and injury, more capable of surviving in hostile environments. The augmentations in the human delegates were just the beginning. Entire generations of modified humans were being born with enhancements built into their DNA. HANA described neural enhancement, research that violated every safety protocol the Federation had established over thousands of years. Humans were integrating artificial intelligence directly into their brains, not simple implants. Full merging of biological and digital consciousness. The risks were enormous. Mental instability, identity death, uncontrolled AI growth. Humans didn't care about the risks. They needed every advantage they could get. Some experiments failed catastrophically. Some subjects died or went insane. Humanity kept trying anyway because the alternative was staying weak in a galaxy full of stronger species. The most disturbing discovery was human military training. HANA had witnessed combat exercises where soldiers practiced warfare in conditions that would kill most Federation species instantly. Hard vacuum, extreme radiation, toxic atmospheres. Humans trained to fight anywhere, against anyone, using any weapon. Their tactical doctrines were centuries ahead of what should have been possible. They had studied Federation military protocols from interrogating captured scouts. Then they had improved on them by adding human perspectives from thousands of years of constant warfare against themselves. Dong Haiyan joined them looking pale and shaken. He had been analyzing human biology samples and historical data. The picture it painted was terrifying. Humans were persistence hunters. Ancient humans had chased prey animals for days until the animals died of exhaustion. Modern humans applied the same principle to warfare. They didn't need to be stronger or faster. They just needed to outlast their enemies, wear them down, never stop, never give up, never accept defeat. Jason contacted them with urgent news. Sojin's warning had finally arrived through the relay network. Her detailed report confirmed what they had learned through bitter experience. She had discovered evidence that human signals had been present across Federation space for months. Not random noise. Deliberate surveillance. Humans had been infiltrating Federation networks quietly for cycles. Learning languages, mapping territories, identifying military assets, preparing for this moment. Every time the Federation dismissed a strange signal as equipment glitch or background radiation, it had been humans watching, listening, recording. They had been inside Federation computer systems for longer than anyone realized. They knew things about the Federation that even most Federation citizens didn't know. Military deployments, political divisions, economic vulnerabilities. Humans had prepared for war while everyone assumed they were still primitive. The diplomatic talks continued for 3 days. Both sides knew they were really negotiating a ceasefire rather than a treaty. The terms were straightforward. Humanity would gain formal recognition as an independent spacefaring civilization. Their territory would be respected. No Federation vessel would enter the Sol system without permission. In exchange, humanity would respect Federation borders. No aggressive expansion. No interference with other species. Trade relations would be established. Cultural exchange programs would be developed. Both sides would pretend this was peaceful first contact rather than what it really was. A standoff between two powers that couldn't risk open war. The treaty was signed by Admiral Jiangsu and Ambassador Minji in a formal ceremony broadcast across both human and Federation networks. Jiangsu read the carefully prepared statement about friendship and cooperation. Minji smiled her diplomatic smile and talked about shared futures. Everyone watching understood the subtext. The Federation wouldn't attack because they couldn't guarantee victory. Humanity wouldn't attack because they weren't ready to face the full Federation armada. Yet as Jiangsu's fleet prepared to depart, Minji visited the flagship one final time. She brought a gift. Complete data on what happened to each scout team. Recovered technology. The remains of all 40 crew members properly preserved for burial according to their species customs. It was both an olive branch and a warning. We're civilized enough to honor your dead, but don't forget how they died. Young-Soo accepted the gift. He asked the question that had been haunting him since this began. What if the first contact had been different? What if Hyun-Woo's team had simply introduced themselves instead of hiding and observing? What if the Federation had approached openly from the start? Would any of this horror have happened? Minji considered the question carefully. Her answer was honest and disturbing. Maybe things would be different. Maybe humans and the Federation would be allies now instead of armed neighbors. Or maybe humanity would have been conquered before they understood the threat, or enslaved, or studied like animals in laboratories. Humans didn't deal well with hypotheticals. They dealt with reality. The reality was that unknown aliens with vastly superior technology had come to Earth and hidden themselves while cataloging humanity. The reality was that humans had no way to know if those aliens were peaceful or hostile. The reality was that fear and survival instinct had driven every decision humanity made. She looked Young-Soo in the eyes. Humans had learned an important lesson from the Scouts. The galaxy was full of species more advanced than humanity. Some might be friendly. Some might be hostile. Most would probably see humans as primitives barely worth noticing. Humanity's survival depended on being noticed, being respected, being feared if necessary. The Scouts had taught humanity that appearing harmless was the most dangerous thing they could do. Better to be seen as a threat and left alone than to be dismissed and potentially destroyed. The Federation fleet jumped back to their space. Young-Soo watched Earth shrink in the viewport. A small blue world that had somehow managed to terrify the most powerful civilization in the galaxy. He updated his official report one final time. Classification change for species, human. Previous assessment, harmless. Current assessment, approach with extreme caution. Recommended action, non-interference. He added a personal note that would never appear in official records. The Scouts had been right in their assessments. Humans were physically weak, technologically primitive, biologically fragile. All true at the moment those reports were made. The error was assuming those facts were permanent. Humans changed. They adapted. They evolved not over millions of years, but over decades when threatened. The greatest danger in the galaxy wasn't strength or technology. It was the capacity to transform from harmless to deadly when survival demanded it. Back on Earth, Sumen met with her research team in a facility deep underground. They had learned more from the Federation contact than the Federation learned from them.